All right, let's begin. We're going to conduct what the source material calls a clinical examination of the mind. So I want you to do something. Just for a second, listen. Listen to the noise inside your own head. And as you're listening, I want you to ask yourself a really dangerous question. Who invited these thoughts? I mean, really, are they even yours? Or have you just been living with a bunch of uninvited guests in a very, very crowded room? We have this modern assumption, right, that our internal world, our mind, is this private, secure sanctuary. But what if that entire belief is just fundamentally wrong? Well, the source material reframes the mind completely. It argues that the mind isn't a sealed room, it's a porous territory. Think of it like an open border. The unrefined mind is basically a land without a king, and it's totally vulnerable to any and all outside influence. And this leads to a condition the source calls cognitive infiltration. What does that mean? Well, to put it bluntly, it means most of what you call your internal monologue, it isn't yours. Not at all. It's really just a collection of parasitic frequencies you've been hosting without even realizing it. So how do these mimetic infections actually get inside? Well, they leak in. Through every social expectation you're afraid of not meeting, every trend you feel this weird compulsion to follow, all that outrage you mirror from the digital hive mind. The system actually weaponizes your most basic human need, the need for belonging, and uses it as a backdoor right into your sovereign interior. Okay, so what are the consequences of all this? I mean, what does it actually feel like to live in this state of permanent psychological exposure with basically no mental defenses? This quote from the material it captures the resulting chaos perfectly. You feel scattered, right? Your mind is full of static, and you can't figure out why, never realizing you simply left the gates to your own fortress wide open.
And let's be clear, this is not empathy. It's what the source calls emotional contagion. It's the liquefaction of the self. Your own unique feelings get dissolved into this gray soup, this raw nerve of a billion online opinions, and you just become a reflection of the collective, not a source of your own signal.
And here's the bottom line. The ultimate consequence of all this infiltration is a total loss of your own personal agency. You think you're the one in control, but in reality, you've become a biological machine running programs that someone else designed. Now, this is where it gets really clinical. The source actually proposes a framework, almost like a calculus, to quantify this mental vulnerability. Now, don't worry, this isn't a math test, but let's just break this down. The top part of the equation, think of that as the battle between your own goals, your sovereign intent, and all the external noise bombarding you. The bottom part is your mental threshold, your ability to actually filter that noise. So the outcome is pretty simple. If your filter, your threshold, is weak, the external noise completely drowns out your own signal. Your mental perimeter just collapses. You stop being an architect of your own life, and you become a simple repeater station for all that external static. And this abstract idea has a very, very real physical cost. That chronic exhaustion that so many of us feel, the source argues that it's the metabolic price you pay for processing the fears and anxieties of people you will never, ever meet. It is the crushing weight of trying to live 1,000 foreign lives all at once. So that's the diagnosis, and yeah, it's pretty bleak. But now we pivot to this solution. The source proposes a very clear, actionable protocol for building what it calls cognitive insulation. The fundamental law is this. You have to become an active, conscious gatekeeper. Your mind is not a public park. It is a sacred bastion. Nothing gets in without being questioned first. And here are the exact questions for that audit. When an emotion or thought appears, you have to stop it at the gate and ask, is this actually mine? Does this help me build what I'm trying to build, or is this just an intruder, a parasite sent to drain my energy? This protocol basically builds a 3-layered defense. First, you practice the liquidation of the gaze. You stop looking to the crowd for validation. Second, you use that clinical audit to guard the gates. And third, you nurture your core self, what the source calls the golden singularity, making it stable and immune to what anyone else thinks. So, what happens when you actually do this? What's the outcome of successfully implementing these protocols and achieving a sovereign mental state? Well, first, let's get one thing straight. This is not about loneliness. Loneliness is the failure of the ego to find a mirror in the world. Insulation is a deliberate choice. It's the success of an architect creating a sanctuary so they can finally do their real work. And here's another key point. This is not an act of fear. A bunker is built to hide. A fortress is built to rule. See the difference? You aren't shutting the world out completely. You're creating a selective membrane, choosing exactly what is worthy of your time and your energy. This quote is really a final call to action. It's a powerful plea for self-preservation. Your energy, your internal fire, it is a finite resource. You cannot build a legacy if you're spending all of your fuel trying to keep the entire world warm. So it all comes down to this simple hierarchy of duties. Your first duty is to the perimeter. Your second duty is to your own signal. And your third duty is to the silence that signal needs to grow. Everything else is just smoke on the horizon. And that brings us to the end. The source material leaves us with this final, really provocative question. Once the defense is built, once the noise is finally gone, the focus shifts from protection to creation. So the gates are closed. What will you build in the silence?
All right, let's dive in. Today, we're getting into a really powerful idea: how to build a fortress for your mind. You know, in a world that's constantly screaming for your attention and trying to get inside your head, we're going to look at a blueprint for taking back control, for reclaiming your mental sovereignty.
So let's just start with a really provocative question. Seriously, take a second, listen to that internal chatter, that monologue running in your head right now, and just ask yourself, who invited these thoughts? What if most of what you think of as you is actually just a room full of uninvited guests?
And it's really the heart of the diagnosis here, these uninvited guests. We're going to explore this very modern condition, this feeling that our minds aren't really private anymore. It's like they've become this public space with an open-door policy, just letting anything and everything wander right in. Look, we all like to believe that our minds are these secure, private sanctuaries, right? But this philosophy we're exploring today argues the complete opposite, that for most of us, the mind is actually a porous territory, just totally open to outside influence. And here's the really unsettling part of that idea. Just because a thought is happening inside your skull doesn't mean it's your thought.
This whole problem actually has a name: cognitive infiltration, and it makes so much sense when you think about it. That pressure you feel to keep up, or that sudden wave of outrage you get from scrolling your feed, where did that come from? The source calls them mimetic infections, and it's a perfect description. They're like thought viruses that just copy themselves from one mind to the next.
So, what's the big deal? What's the actual cost of leaving your mental gates wide open like this? Well, it turns out this state of constant psychological exposure has a really high price, and it's all propped up by a system the source has a name for: the Leviathan. This is basically the entire collective system that profits from our distraction. And the way it works is brilliant, in a scary way. The Leviathan doesn't have to kick down your door to get in. No, it just leaks right through the walls, using your own natural curiosity and even your own empathy against you. And here are the effects. This is what it actually feels like. You end up living in what's called the radioactive light of a billion different opinions. You start mistaking emotional contagion, just feeling what everyone else is feeling, for genuine empathy. Your mind basically gets colonized, and you start running someone else's software. And pretty soon, you're not even you anymore. You're just a repeater station broadcasting the noise of the hive. Now, the source even gives us a formula for this. Don't let the symbols freak you out. The idea is actually super simple. Think of perimeter integrity as your mental defense shield. If your own internal signal, what the formula calls intent, is weaker than the constant noise coming from the outside world, well, your shield just crumbles. The noise becomes your new reality, and you're no longer in charge of your own thoughts. This is a really sobering thought. The long-term price you pay is you become a hollow shell. You've been so accessible to everyone for so long that there's nothing left inside to even access. You become a public park, just worn down by endless social interactions, with absolutely no internal world of your own left. Okay, so that was the diagnosis, and it's pretty heavy. But now, let's talk about the solution. And this is key. It is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about creating a sanctuary. It's about insulation. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. You know, loneliness, that's a state of lack. It's the ego failing to find its reflection in other people's eyes. But insulation, that's an achievement. That's the architect succeeding at building a sanctuary where, finally, your own signal can be heard loud and clear.
And let's get even more specific. What are you building here? Is it a bunker or is it a fortress? A bunker is built out of fear. Its whole purpose is to hide. But a fortress is built from a position of strength. It's built to rule and to protect something valuable inside. The architect isn't hiding. They're just making very conscious choices about what's worth their energy.
So, how do we actually do this? How do we build the fortress? Well, we need a blueprint, and the source gives us one. It's called the Architect's Protocol, and it's a clear, actionable framework.
So how does this protocol work? Well, let's look at the principle behind it. Again, don't worry about the math, just focus on the idea. Your internal boundary, your fortress wall, gets stronger when your personal mission, what the formula calls legacy, becomes so heavy and important that the opinion of the crowd becomes mathematically insignificant. To put it simply, your purpose gets so loud that it drowns out the static.
So, the protocol has 3 basic steps. First, liquidation of the gaze. You have to consciously, deliberately stop looking for your self-worth in external feedback loops, the likes, the comments, the approval. Second, gatekeeper logic. You have to audit every single emotion that comes your way. Ask yourself, is this anxiety actually mine, or did I just catch it from the hive? If it's not yours, you expel it. You don't argue with it. And third, nurture the golden singularity. This is where you cultivate that core intent inside you, the part of you that is completely indifferent to both praise and criticism. That's your true signal.
So you do all this work, you build the walls, you set up the gatekeeper. What's the reward? What do you get for mastering this protocol? Well, you achieve a state of truly profound peace and stability.
And this is the goal. This is what it's all about. Sovereign stasis. It's a state of such unshakable internal calm and focus that the outside world could be a raging storm, and inside your halls, not a single candle will even flicker.
And this is what that reality looks like. This is the payoff. You can walk through absolute chaos and remain perfectly still inside. Your foundation for stability is internal. It doesn't rely on the shifting sands of your environment. You finally become the king or queen of your own silent castle.
And please, remember this. This is so important. You do not owe your energy to a world that just wants to consume it. This is not about being selfish. This is about honoring your own unique potential. You are not a resource to be harvested. You are a miracle of architectural intent.
And we're going to end with this beautiful, powerful reframing of the whole idea. The walls of your fortress, they aren't about aggression. They aren't about keeping the world out. They are an act of self-preservation. They are there to keep you in, to protect your own signal, your own light, and your own dreams until they are finally strong enough to stand on their own.